Our first guest is a stellar catch for us because he is the debate man of all people in the country. And Lynn, you're going to introduce him and kick us off.
I will, and I want to give a hearty sometimes welcome to our kickoff guest tonight, Frank Fahrenkopf Jr. And when I met Frank, he was the chairman of the Republican National Committee. And back then, he and others looked at studies, looked at the debate landscape and said, we need a nonpartisan debate commission. And he went on to help create what we now know as the presidential debates. And I want to welcome him here tonight, Frank Fahrenkopf, who is the co-chair of the debate commission. And the first debate is Tuesday night. So this is why we wanted to talk about the debates now and have Frank here. Frank, a hearty sometimes welcome. We have so many questions for you.
Thank you, Lynn and Laura. It's a great pleasure for me to be with you tonight.
So for our readers, could you, listeners, see, I'm a bit of a throwback tonight. We know it's a 90-minute debate. It starts at 8 o'clock Chicago time. It's on every network. But one of the things everyone, I think, wants to know is, especially in these COVID times, Frank, what is the format? Where will Trump be? Where will Biden be? Are they standing, sitting, or what?
They'll both be standing on podiums. One of the things we've done, Lynn, this time because of the coronavirus, is we've partnered with the Cleveland Clinic, and they are medical advisors with all of the debates, not just the first one, which, as you know, will be held in Cleveland in a joint campus between the Cleveland Clinic and Case Western Reserve. But they'll also be our advisors all the way through, not only with where the candidates stand, but where our staff takes care of themselves, where the audience is, how many people can be there, how far they're separated, and so forth. And right now, the plan is that they'll be together in Cleveland, and they'll be with podiums. I assume they'll be more than 6 feet apart. And as you know, Chris Wallace was selected by the commission to tee off and be the first moderator. And what we've done over the years, and if you think back when we began, Lynn, it was always a moderator and 3 reporters. And I was always against that format because when reporter number 1 was chosen to give his or her question to the candidates, she or he has thought long and hard about what that question was going to be. And the rules in those days said that they would ask the question, one candidate would have 2 minutes to reply to it. The other candidate would have 1 minute to reply to what the first candidate said, and then 30 seconds for the first guy. And then we were to move to reporter number 2. Well, reporter number 2 spent a lot of time thinking about what her or his question were going to be, and they weren't going to go back and follow up on reporter number 1, whose question may not have been answered. So we tried an experiment in 1992 at the debate at Michigan State, and we had 3 candidates then. We had President George Herbert Walker Bush, we had former Governor Bill Clinton, and we had Ross Perot. And for half of that debate, we had the normal platform where there was 1 moderator and 3 reporters. But for the second half of that debate, it was a single moderator, Jim Lehrer. And after that, every single one of our debates since that one in 1992 has been with a single moderator who has the ability to follow up on the questions. Now, we also made a major change in format in 2008 when the Denver debate between Senator Barack Obama and Governor Romney. And what we did then is we took the 90 minutes, and remember, the 90 minutes, there's no ads, there's no advertisements or anything else. The 90 minutes is straightforward, straight through. We divided it into 6 15-minute sections. And the moderator, a week before, tells the candidates and the world what they're going to focus on in each of those 15 segments. And in fact, Chris Wallace, just the day before yesterday, announced what the 6 subjects he was going to focus on. I've got them in front of me here. I got to read them. First, Trump and Biden records, the economy, COVID-19, race and violence in the cities of America, the Supreme Court, and integrity of the election. So those are the 6 pieces of the pie, the 90-minute pie, that Chris will concentrate on in questioning the former vice president and the present president. So that's sort of where we are right now.
So speaking of Chris, let me just tell our listeners too. So Tuesday, Case Western Reserve with Chris Wallace of Fox News. Vice presidential debate is October 7 from the University of Utah. Susan Page
Salt Lake City. Yep.
Is the moderator there. The second presidential debate is in Miami with Steve Scully of C-SPAN moderating. And then the third debate is in Nashville with Kristen Welker of NBC. So I'll get back to the debate topics in a second, but could you tell everyone, how did you pick these people? And if you could focus on the conversation, that's kind of going on in the background, and why Fox News anchor got the first debate.
First of all, let me start by saying we do not choose networks, and we do not choose newspapers or magazines. We focus on the individual who we're looking at, regardless of where they work or what their paper or network does. And so the first thing we do, and it's the hardest thing we do, Lynn, every 4 years, and particularly this time it was probably harder than any other time, because so many of the networks and some of the newspapers have gone one way and one way only, and it's very, very difficult. So we started out.
Bent.
Yes. So we sat down, as we always do, and say, all right, first of all, we have to make sure we have diversity. And so our decision was we're going to have 2 women and we're going to have 2 men. And we started with the women. And one of the things we have not done since almost 2000 is had a major print reporter on being a moderator. Because we always
why is that though? I mean,
well, it was.
I mean, speaking as a print reporter.
Well, it was because we always felt, and I think it was true, that they're doing the moderator. There's a microphone in their ear, and they're talking to producers off stage and so forth on timing and so forth. And so it had to be someone who is used to working with that bug in their ear. And what's happened in the last 10 or 20 years, particularly if you watch the Sunday shows, you see more and more print reporters who are on there as guests of whoever the person is on the show, and more of them have learned how to do that. And we felt that Susan Page for USA Today has done a great job moving between different networks, and I've always respected Susan and thought she was a tremendous reporter. So we were very pleased in the way she's setting history here for print reporters by being our choice for the University of Utah vice presidential debate. So we then had to look at the 2 men. I'll get back to the other women in a moment. Everyone thought that we heard from that Chris Wallace did a tremendous job in the last debate in 2016, the one in Las Vegas. That on both sides, both candidates, the people thought he did a fair, good job. And we thought he kind of earned, very much like Jim Lara had earned and Bob Schieffer before him in past debates, of being fair and balanced and doing a good job. So we invited Chris back. We then went to the question of the town hall meeting. Now, historically, we've had between 50 and 100 people chosen by the Gallup organizations in the particular area where we're holding the debate. And this year it's going to be in Miami, who are in bleachers, sort of like a theater in the round, with the moderators and the candidates in between. We're not going to be able to do that this year with social distancing and what the Cleveland Clinic is telling us. So we said, who probably does more of this sort of thing than anyone else? Steve Scully on C-SPAN. I mean, he does it every day with his C-SPAN. So we picked him. We then went to the question, which is the hardest for us, Lynn, and that is diversity with women in positions on any of the networks and papers who are of color, and regardless of whether we're talking about Asian or Black or Hispanic.
And why is that the hardest?
Because there are not that many people who are up front in any of these networks who and have shown and have enough time, FaceTime on TV, that they've shown they can handle this sort of thing. So we did a tremendous amount of research, and we got remarkable recommendations from everyone about Kristen Welker, who, as you know, is the co-anchor of the weekend on Today and the White House correspondent for NBC News. And so We were so, and we looked at a body of the work. We just don't do it on what people say. We, for about 6 months, look at the body of work, whether they're print or on television, what they're saying, what they're doing, because we don't want someone who's so far on one side, the right or the left. We want someone who will be perceived by the public to be fair and balanced, and the network has nothing whatsoever to do with it. I mean, you could clearly say, I'm sure that there'll be some Trump people say, oh, you got someone from NBC and MSNBC hate Trump. Likewise, with the selection of Chris, you can have people on the left saying, oh, wow, you went with the Trump network. But we don't pay attention to the network. We look at their body of work. And so we thought Kristen was just perfect for that. So that's how we reached the decision. It's very difficult for us every time. We want to be fair, we want to be balanced, and we want to get people who we have confidence. This first debate, and probably some of the others, the estimation is that there'll be 120 million people watching that. And that's a great burden on the person who's sitting in that moderator chair. So we try to do our best. We've, over 30 years, I would say, and I'm not going to tell you who, I think we only made 2 mistakes, and we'll go from there. So that's how we do it anyway. We try to go through diversity and, who's going to handle this particular type of approach that we're going to do with that particular debate.
So here's another, I think, problem that may come up. The reality is President Trump doesn't tell the truth. He distorts, he dissembles, he makes stuff up. And what is the role of the moderator in real-time fact-checking?
Well, that's a really good question, and one we spent a lot of time on. And we've told these four, and we've told them all before, it is not their job as a moderator of a presidential debate is different than their job interviewing a candidate one-on-one for their television show or whatever it might be. There, if you're interviewing a candidate and the candidate says something that completely is different from what they said a week before, if you're interviewing them, you say, well, wait a minute, you didn't say that a week before, you said something different. That's fair. A debate means that the two candidates are going to interface and argue and debate. And therefore, it's not the job of the moderator here to say, well, wait a minute, you said something different. It's the job of the other candidate to say, wait a minute, you said something different. Now, if the other candidate doesn't say something, the moderator can say, well, wait a minute, candidate number 2, do you agree with what candidate number 1 says? But it's not their job to be a fact checker. Our view is the minute that debate is over, there are going to be so many fact checkers on every newspaper, on every television network, but it's not their job to be a fact checker.
Okay, now I think that will be a little controversial, Frank. It has been already, because this is an asymmetrical debate in that you have one party who is known not to just as I said, dissemble and whatever. Laura, I have another question, but were you about to jump in?
Sure. Yeah, I wanted to follow up on this whole fact checking thing. It sounds like that you put a lot of power in the hands of the moderator, and I understand you have to have somebody that's in control, and I get that. But there's a whole media world out there. These debates are in a little box for an hour and a half, but when that box is done, there are going to be reporters and spin rooms and commentary all day long. And I know you don't have anything to say about that, but what's your critique on how the media in general covers your debates, and where do we go wrong, and what really riles you up about how we cover it? Or do you think we do a tremendous job of covering those?
Well, I'm a big fan of the media. I always have been. I must tell you, though, the last 4 years, I've never seen anything. I work very closely, and Lynn would know, Frank Sesno. He's got a program at GW here in Washington on the media and what's happening with the media. And, what's happened now is I see a person who looks like they're 16 years old, who's got a microphone in their hand, after reporting on what's happened, giving their opinion of what they've just seen. It didn't used to be that way. Walter Cronkite was the guy who indicated, what the facts were, and then he had people who came on the show who, underneath their pictures, said opinion. And their opinion was given then on those facts. So the only problem I have now with the media is that there's no longer just the question of reporting the facts and somebody else is giving the editorial comment. Now every reporter is giving the editorial comment. But that's fine. That comes, the media has changed like everything else has changed. And I mean, but you know, let's face it. I watch CNN, I watch MSNBC, I watch Fox, I go back and forth. You never hear anything good about Republicans or the president on CNN or on MSNBC. Now you do hear, I happen to think that at least sometimes on Fox, on the news portion, I'm not talking about the evening commentators, but on the news portion, they usually try to balance. It may not be balanced all the way. And so that's what I mean. It's so different depending what news station you're watching and where you are in journalism. And I think that journalism, as we know, and on the Cesno thing at GW, the opinion of the American people and trustworthiness of the news media, unfortunately, like they are at all establishments. I'm a Catholic, the Catholic Church, corporate life, bankers, it's all going down. The American people have lost a great deal of confidence in the institutions that they used to look to for guidance.
So one more quick thing. How important do you think the debates will be this time around? You said there's going to be a tremendous number of people interested. People are talking about it everywhere. But the conventional wisdom and the polls seem to reflect the fact that most people have already made up their mind about who they're voting for president. There's only a sliver of the American populace that are still undecided. So what role do the debates play? Are they as influential? I know you're probably going to say they are, but
well, no, Laura,
influential in this divided partisan environment?
Laura, we've done a lot of research on that after, you know, having done it for 30 plus years. And there are people who say, oh, well, it's a waste of time. You know, everyone's made up their mind where they're going to go. That's not necessarily true. We've done a lot of polling afterwards, and we know that 60 to 75% of the public says that the debates are important factors in their decision of who they're going to vote for. It's not the only factor, but it is a factor that they take into consideration of what they're going to do. And I think this time, for the second time in 4 years, I mean, I'll tell you, having done this for so long, 2016 was the first time that we had a debate where neither candidate was approved by 50% of the people, okay? Mm-hmm. They didn't approve of either one of them. Now we're close to it. Joe's getting close to about 50%, and the president's been at 45 for a long time. I think the question here is whether or not, with all the attacks on Joe and the way he's campaigning, working out of his basement, not facing questions by reporters on a regular basis, whether or not he's going to have the ability to stand up and do what he's got to do for 90 minutes without a break. The other side is saying, well, what kind of person is Donald Trump going to purvey on that stage? I'm asked all the time, what have you learned after doing 30 of these debates over the last 33 years? It is the American people want to like their president. Last time was they didn't like either one of them. But this time, I think more tend to like Joe Biden and probably like the president. We're going to see. But we're going to see who shows up. And that's why I think this particular debate, the first debate, is going to be very, very important. And most people want to see these two in action and make up their own minds.
I have kind of two technical questions on topic.
Yes.
And I know, everyone, we're nearing our time, and we will we'll move on. But the moderator has all this latitude on the topics. Climate change is a big topic. How do you make sure something that big gets asked in one of these debates if the moderator just do what they want?
A good question. And we've gotten a lot of letters and so forth. It wasn't in this, but boy, if you're Susan Page, or if you're Steve Scully, or you're Kristen Welker, you're welcome. You're saying, wow, he didn't cover that. I'm going to cover that. So I am sure. We don't tell them what to say. I mean, we're not going to interfere with the integrity of their journalistic views. That's up for them to ask the questions. But I think my bet is, I don't know. I talk to Chris every day, but I didn't talk to him about this question. Among his 6 is the Supreme Court. I'll bet you a week ago it wasn't the Supreme Court. Okay, so
we'll have a nominee. We'll have a nominee by Tuesday. So
probably right.
We'll have a nominee Saturday. Sure.
Yeah, on it. So let me ask you just one other thing.
Sure.
How it was framed. Some people say by Chris saying his topic is race and violence in the city, and we're talking about the context of what's happening post Breonna Taylor in Louisville, it's kind of plays to Trump's law and order theme, and there would have been perhaps a better way to delve into some of those topics.
I read that in the Washington Post this morning. And if I would be fair, I would say, oh, they're going to do COVID-19. Since the Biden campaign is focusing totally on COVID-19 and whether or not the president killed 200,000 people by not acting in quicker, in a better way. So, I mean, you can take both sides of that. But I think there's no question that the whole thing of violence in the cities, what we're seeing with people, 2 policemen being shot yesterday, the destruction of many, many cities in the interstate, and the death of what we saw in Minneapolis, what we've seen in D.C. is an issue that's before the American people and which is on television every night. So I think that was legitimate, just as I think COVID-19 and the question of whether the president handled it right is a fair issue to be discussed in the debate.
Well, Frank, I would just jump in and argue, though, that a lot of it has to do with terminology. I mean, the terms that Chris Wallace is using is race and violence. He could have talked about police brutality. He could have talked about the protests and civil unrest, but he chose 2 terms that are, as Lynn says, it plays right into Trump's argument and could come out sounding a little bit unbalanced.
Well, I'll give you Chris's telephone number.
Please do.
we don't, like I said, we leave it to the moderators to do that. And there was an article in the Washington Post this morning that went at that. But, I think from what you see every night, I mean, almost, it is a question that the American people, I think a lot of them are concerned, not all of them are concerned about, but I think it's legitimate. Now, whether the terminology should have been changed differently, I'll leave that to everyone's own opinion.
Well, we'll have faith. Chris Wallace, got his start in Chicago television.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
He has roots here. But anyway, we have got to move on. Frank, I thank you for being here and giving us a preview of what are 3 big debates with the presidential candidates and then the vice presidential debate coming up too. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Fine. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Laura.
Good luck. You're going to need it next week.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.